Hey y'all, it's Heel Heat time.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and this is going to be a Heel Heat Top 10. The topic of this Top 10: wrestlers that should be in the WWE Hall of Fame revisited. Now, if you may recall, we did a Top 10 wrestlers that should be in the Hall of Fame about a year and a half ago. At that time, since that time, there have been two Hall of Fame ceremonies, and half of our list went in. So hopefully it's a good sign that when we mention stuff, people go into the Hall of Fame. Now, we're going to go right into it. Number 10, William Regal. The guy had a tremendous career, either as Steven, William, won championships on a couple different continents. He's a guy that's been in the business for 30, 40 years, started off as a teen, and the more that we go into it, the more we find out just how influential William Regal is. Whether it be from the style of watching a Cesaro work, or a Daniel Bryan, and how much they've taken from him, or just listening to a guy like CM Punk explain how influential William Regal was to his career. He's easily one of the best wrestlers to never get that big push and never become a world champion. But the matches and the memories and the influence he had definitely make him a worthy member of the WWE Hall of Fame. Now, our number 9 is a tag team. Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, the Rock and Roll Express. The guys that were headlining Jim Crockett Promotions shows, they were the main event when you had guys like Ric Flair, the Road Warriors, Dusty Rhodes, the Four Horsemen. When you had all this talent here, you had the Rock and Roll Express as big, and if not bigger than all of them, selling t-shirts, selling records, going out main eventing shows, selling out arenas. Just a great tag team, a precursor to a lot of the teams that would come after it, the Rockers. I mean, even if we go down to today, a team like the Young Bucks owe a lot of what they do and how their style has evolved to the Rock and Roll Express. Just a quintessential face team, one of the real highlights of Jim Crockett Promotions, one of the most beloved teams in the history of wrestling. Our number 8. We mentioned this on the first one, but we're getting to that era where some of the ECW guys are going to start coming up for consideration, that their careers have either been in the twilight or have ended. And I think no better than to put the first ECW only guy, or the first guy that's an ECW guy, because there are guys in the Hall of Fame that wrestled in ECW, but this guy was an ECW guy, and that would be Tommy Dreamer, the heart and soul of ECW, the guy that was the backbone, the guy that broke his back for the company, would do absolutely anything, the guy to this day, when he appears on a wrestling show, still gets the ECW chant. He held the flag, and he's held the flag longer and stronger than anybody else. The guy that is ECW, the guy that should be representing ECW, and the first ECW guy that should go in. Our number 7, Mike Rotundo, a.k.a. IRS Erwin R. Shyster. The guy had a long, successful career. He won tag team championships everywhere he went, in the WWF and WCW, back to the WWF. I mean, the guy, with everything he did and how good he was, he had his team with Barry Windham, which was a great face tag team, him being part of the varsity club, turning heel, becoming Michael Wall Street, then VK Wall Street, and then going on to become IRS. Just a guy that kind of gets overlooked and lost in the shuffle on how good he actually was. And to me, it's a real shame, because his talent was immense. He could have been so much bigger even. And we're seeing him now when his two sons Bray Wyatt and Bo Dallas are both becoming stars in their own right. But you see little bits of Mike Rotundo, a lot in Bo Dallas more than Bray Wyatt, but even Bray Wyatt, you see some of it coming out. And just the way that he would come to the ring and the way that he could play a face or a heel and it didn't matter to him and he could pull off both extremely well, I think he's definitely deserving of the spot. Now, number 6 is probably one of the most innovative tag teams in the history of professional wrestling. Michael P.S. Hayes, Bam Bam Terry Gordy, Buddy Roberts, and later on Jimmy Jam Garvin, the Fabulous Freebirds. What can you say about the Freebirds that hasn't already been said? We've got the Von Erichs in the Hall of Fame already. You can't have the Von Erichs in without the Freebirds. Without the Freebirds, the Von Erichs aren't as big. Without the Von Erichs, the Freebirds aren't as big. They're so intertwined with each other that their careers basically have to go together. And that's just not the only thing that the Freebirds do. They had the 3-man tag that would turn into a rule where any 2 of the 3 could defend the titles, which we've seen now has been used over and over again. They were the first ones to really popularize it. Yeah, the rock and roll music, what they brought in, the music videos, the cocky attitudes, the perfect mix of talents where you had Bam Bam the Bruiser, you had P.S. Hayes the Talker, you had Buddy Roberts the technician. And they would go in, and you didn't know which 2 of the 3 you would get, but you knew you would eventually get all 3 anyway. Just a fabulous team from a fabulous era in wrestling that innovated and just set the bar so high for everything that came after them that even to this day people look at the Freebirds as inspiration. Our number 5 is Brian Pillman, aka Flying Brian, aka the Loose Cannon Brian Pillman. A guy who unfortunately had his life cut too short before he really got to the pinnacle of what he could be. He started, we seen him as Flying Brian Pillman, the guy fresh off of the Cincinnati Bengals roster, and one of the great high flyers in the early 90s in WCW, one of the guys that held up the division, to eventually he transforms into being part of the Hollywood Blondes with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and transforms from that into being one of the 4 Horsemen, and then we see the change to where he becomes a loose cannon. And he develops a character in WCW, takes that character to ECW, and then even parlays it further into WWE. The character that I think is the first shot, the first precursor to what the Attitude Era would become, is the Brian Pillman loose cannon character. I mean, he was doing Attitude Era stuff before it was the Attitude Era, before Austin did it, before anybody did. He was going out there cutting quote-unquote shoot promos. He did the famous Booker Man angle with Kevin Sullivan, showing up in ECW threatening to whip out his Johnson and piss on the ring. I mean, everything he did, it was just so innovative and so different. He was so far ahead of what was going on in the wrestling business that even when he died, it took the company 2-3 years to catch up with him. If he wouldn't have passed on, I guarantee you he would have been a multiple-time WWE champion and would have been the biggest foil to Stone Cold Steve Austin during the Attitude Era. Just an amazing guy who's unfortunately laid the groundwork but didn't get to reap the benefits of what he was doing. And our number 4 is the Big Boss Man, a.k.a. Big Bubba Rogers, a.k.a. the Boss, a.k.a. the Guardian, man with several different names. Whether it be being the Heavy for the Midnight Express or being the guard from Cobb County, Georgia, the Boss Man was a solid talent. He was a great heel who transitioned to being a great face at a time where he was the second or third biggest thing in the WWF behind Hogan and Warrior. Bossman was right there giving great matches as well. Then you transition him in, goes through a little bit of lull in the mid-90s, comes back in the Attitude Era, rejuvenated, ready to go, and really, really doing some of the most insane and controversial things. I mean, you look at him now, and they're a little bit hokey. But at the time, the stuff he was doing with Big Show, the stuff he did with Al Snow, with Pepper the Dog, and with Big Show's dad, it was just, he was helping to push the envelope and continuing to be that major star that he was. And he had that star factor and that quality that drew you in, and you knew when you remembered him, and you knew, heck, even if you look at it, his Attitude Era outfit, his attire, his gear, it's basically what the Shield wore. But he came back, came back, he was a major star, a guy I think really doesn't get the just due that he should. And I really think it's a shame that someone like him isn't more prominently mentioned and isn't in the Hall of Fame already. Now, our number 3 is two guys who deserve it on their own merits, but we're going to condense it into one thing so we can get them both in at once. That's the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith, the Dynamite Kid. If you see any wrestler from 1983 on that hasn't been influenced by the Dynamite Kid, they're flat out lying to you. The guy was so influential and so great in the ring. So much talent. Then they team him with his cousin, Davey Boy the Bulldog, who's just as talented, gives you just a little bit of a different style. But the two of them together were an amazing tag team, highlighting the tag team division when the WWE had dozens of tag teams. I mean, they had the Rougeaus, the Hart Foundation, they had the Killer Bees, Demolition, Strike Force, Power and Glory, the Conquistadors even. I mean, they had teams up and down the roster, Nikolai Volkov and the Sheik. All these great teams they had in the time, and here are the Bulldogs out wrestling all of them and stealing the show every night they went out there. They would eventually split. Davey Boy would go on to a successful singles run. Dynamite, his singles run was a little bit before the Bulldogs, where his main fame as a single star was, but both of them, even as singles wrestlers, if you took the British Bulldogs tag team out of it, both of them on their single wrestling capabilities alone and their accomplishments deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Davey Boy would go on, team with Owen, team with Yoko, do the Intercontinental Championship, headline one of the greatest SummerSlams of all time, and put one of the greatest matches of all time in with Bret the Hitman Hart. Davey Boy, or Dynamite, we know from the matches with Tiger Mask, some of the greatest matches of all time. Two of the great wrestlers that just formed an amazing tag team, and both deserve to be in there. Now, our number 2 is a guy we just mentioned, Owen Hart. For my money, I think the best wrestler out of the Hart family was Owen Hart. I enjoyed him so much more than Bret Hart. Not saying that Bret was bad. Bret was great. Bret was amazing. Owen was different. Owen was special. He could wrestle, he could brawl, he could be a high flyer, he could be an annoying heel, he could be an amazing face, he could be a badass heel, he could do whatever you asked of him, and he would become a chameleon and fit into that role and blow you away. I mean, his matches with Bret the Hitman Hart are legendary. His feud with Steve Austin is legendary. You go up and down, you'd be hard-pressed to find a bad Owen Hart match. You'd be hard-pressed to find somewhere where you go, that was terrible. But Owen just, his charisma and his style and his gimmicks and everything he did just leapt off of the page and made him a star. I think we were just beginning to see him really break out of Brett's shadow when we started seeing the stuff he did with the Nation of Domination, and then the Blue Blazer thing with him doing both, the team with Jeff Jarrett. I do honestly believe that Owen Hart, if he would have lived another 5 years, he would have been a major player. He would have been in the roles. He would have been highlighting and main eventing WrestleManias, and we would have seen him reach the plateau that his brother Brett did. Unfortunately, the accident that happened. It really sucks that it did, because much like Brian Pillman, I think Owen Hart's best was still to come. However, what he left for us is an undenying legacy of greatness. Now, if you've seen our top 10s before, or even if this is your first time watching it, we do a little thing, it's called the best of the rest. Basically, the guys that just barely made the list in no missed the list, in no particular order. First up, Bruiser Brody, one of the all-time great hardcore style wrestlers, guy that was really one of the last territorial stars that kind of didn't go to the WWE, never really want to go there, would wrestle in the AWA, World Class, some NWA territories, Puerto Rico. Guy that laid the groundwork for the style that would become the ECW style, and a little bit of which would highlight and do some of the Attitude Era stuff. Just an amazing guy, a great talent, and a great attraction. Next up, the Midnight Express, whether it be Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey, or Bobby Eaton and Stan Lane, the team that was mainly the foil for a team like the Rock and Roll Express. A great team, a great pair, a great duo that just, they were the antithesis. If you had the Rock and Roll Express, you had to have the Midnight Express. Their matches with the guys like the Legion of Doom, with Dusty and Nikita, with the Horsemen, with the Dynamic Dudes even, all legendary feuds, a great tag team that was part of, in my opinion, the greatest era of tag team wrestling, the mid to late 80s, where we had just the explosion of great teams. We had the Legion of Doom, the Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express, Freebirds, Demolition, Powers of Pain, the British Bulldogs, the Hart Foundation, the Rockers. All the way up and down the list, you had great tag teams that were just... And right there, right in the middle of it, is the Midnight Express. Next up, Goldust. Dustin Rhodes. He's one of the more controversial people that have ever wrestled. He's a guy that's gone on for the past 20 plus years, and he's done everything from being Dusty Rhodes' son, the Natural, to turning it into Goldust, to creating a character that leaves a mark and leaves a memory on anybody's brain that ever watched him. Just a great talent, and a guy that was given a gimmick that probably should have went nowhere, and has carried it on for the past 20 years and kept it, and has made it one of the most memorable things you'll ever see. And last but not least, on our best of the rest, a team we just briefly mentioned a few times through here, Demolition. Whether it be Axe and Smash or Axe Smash and Crush, a team that started off that most people looked at as a Road Warrior ripoff. However, they went out and they carved their own path and created their own history and made their own mark in the business, to the point that when the Road Warriors came in to the WWF, everybody wanted to see Demolition versus the Road Warriors to see who really was the best. Just a great team that, again, is one of those teams, much like most of the people on here, that kind of are getting lost as the time goes on. They're not mentioning them on television. They're not mentioning them on their greatest hits lists, but they are a team that really made an impact and really set themselves apart. Now, if you think we put someone up too high, put someone down too low, left someone off the list completely, let us know what you think. Hit us up on our Facebook, hit us up on Twitter, put the comments down where? Down there, right there. There's a little section. Make sure you hit like too, so we get the like and let us know that you like what we're doing. Now, coming up, our number one, the wrestler most deserving of the Hall of Fame that is not there just yet, the Macho Man Randy Savage. How in the world can you have a Hall of Fame and have this many years of inductions without having arguably one of the 5 biggest stars in the history of wrestling not in the Hall of Fame? It is absurd. It is crazy. It is silly that we're still having this conversation that Randy Macho Man Savage is not in the Hall of Fame. The guy is absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the greatest stars that ever did it. He's a guy that you can walk up to people on the streets that don't watch wrestling at all and say, hey, do you know who Macho Man Randy Savage is? They go, yeah, that's the Slim Jim guy. Or yeah, he's the wrestler. Because everybody knows who Macho Man is. Macho Man left an indelible mark, influenced countless wrestlers, won major championships everywhere he went, was a megastar, one of the most beloved wrestlers of all time. Yet, for whatever reason, and we all know the rumors, so we're not going to go into that. For whatever reason, he's not in the Hall of Fame. I think it's a travesty. It would be like if you had the NFL Hall of Fame and you didn't put Joe Montana in because Joe Montana said bad things about the NFL or whatever reason. You didn't put Joe Montana in the Hall of Fame. That is the equivalent of not putting the Macho Man Randy Savage in the Hall of Fame. It's like not putting Babe Ruth into the Baseball Hall of Fame. It's like not putting Pele into the Soccer Hall of Fame. The guy is that good, that transcendent, and that great of a talent that he should have been one of the first people into the Hall of Fame, let alone being a guy that every year we have to sit and wonder and go, is this the year they finally put him in? But basically, that's all we have to say about that. This has been our top 10 wrestlers that are not in the WWE Hall of Fame revisited. My name is George Coles, and thank you for watching Heel Heat.